Hey, everybody. Welcome to the B2B Revenue Leadership Podcast. Hey, what we do on this podcast is talk about what B2B sales and marketing leaders, operators, and experts are doing today to really break through and grow their businesses at exponential levels. Let's get it in the interview. At the end, I'll give you an update on my courses, and you can check out my website at b2brevenue.com, and it's Brian G. Burns on LinkedIn. Hey, Nigel, welcome back to the show. As a way of getting started, give us a little update.
Well, it's been a busy year. Working on a book that comes out in a few weeks. It's called Revenue Harvest, a Sales Leader's Almanac for Planning the Perfect Year. And so I've spent a couple years living on a farm. Some of your guests might remember the last time we were together, we talked about my move from the city to the farm, and it's really made undeniable the parallels between farming and leading a sales team. And so the book is unequivocally for sales leaders, executives, and investors, but it's written through the lens of what I believe might be one of the oldest professions, farming.
We're talking about sales, right?
Yeah, we're talking about sales.
Okay. But everyone's got the hunter mentality or the hunter mindset.
This isn't about hunter-gatherer. It's not about that. It's about I'm seeing in the marketplace more and more companies, executives, and investors looking for some quick fix, some fad, some piece of technology that's going to change things.
Yep.
And I'm looking at all my farming friends that drive their GPS-guided combines that still say it's still going to be too hot, it's going to be too cold, there's going to be too much rain sometimes. There's going to be all these things I can't control.
Yep.
And there's not really a piece of technology that's going to fix that for you.
No.
And so it's a book that says, listen, there are timeless principles that will get you through any selling year.
Yeah.
And if you ignore them, it's a cautionary tale. If you ignore them, there's no piece of technology, there's no piece of fad that's going to get you through it. You won't have a long career. That's
it. And our kind of mammal brain looks for that quick fix, that quick meal instead of, because the farmer mentality is if you don't, plant, if you don't fertilize, if you don't tend, and you don't weed, you don't harvest.
If you don't work
every day, right?
Yeah.
And I come from a family of farmers, and, it's up at the same time every day. It's doing the stuff that you don't want to do every day. And it pays off instead of just that end of the quarter rush and what I used to call kind of the roller coaster, right? The quarter's over, people go on vacation, they go to club, they have kickoff, they have all these meetings and everything. And all of a sudden, time just goes away. Time doesn't stop, right?
That's right. Time doesn't stop. And speaking of time, one thing that I see, and I want to hear about your perspective on this. It's time started. You were on the clock far in advance before you started doing the work. So the way that manifests is we don't finish our forecast until February.
Yeah.
We don't give it to the team until the end of February. Then we've changed their comp plans to match this new forecast that the board's already approved. Nobody on the sales team has seen it, given any insight to it. And now we're asking them to go do something differently without any thought to how this might affect them, whether or not it's going to fly. And, oh, by the way, we're already behind on the first quarter. So what type of energy does that inject into your team?
Yeah.
Then on the backside of that, because we've been so late in presenting the plan, positioning the plan, preparing the team, we're behind the eight ball on prospecting. We're behind the eight ball on identifying the strategic accounts, taking new products to market.
Yeah.
So what's going to happen is at the end of the year, when everyone is tired and wants to rest, I'm an anxious sales leader that's asking you not to go on Christmas vacation, emails on Thanksgiving Day, eroding my credibility as a leader. And it's a perfect video for you to do walking around on the phone. You're with your family saying, no, I get it. It's Thanksgiving. I'll get it in.
Yeah. I just did one that said every sales year ever. And because this is the time it happens. what do we have? People take a little bit of vacation, then there's sales kickoff. Then somebody comes sick to sales kickoff. Everyone is sick. Next week, people aren't feeling good. 2 weeks later, they get a QBR, or the year planning. They don't get their comp plan until late February. So they're kind of slacking, like, do I work on this? Do I not work on this? And they don't even get settled in until March. Q1 is over. And then all the accelerators are all back end loaded. So people are kind of hedging through the whole process. Do they sandbag into next year, or do they try and cram it into this year? And all this gamesmanship that didn't exist before.
And now, because we've missed Q1, there's questions about should we reforecast? And now the boards have, and it's all this nonsense. It's a doom loop.
It is a doom loop. And I think it's getting worse because there's too much technology put in, and everyone's looking at the output of the technology instead of talking to the reps, talking to each other.
I have the same view on technology. In fact, you won't hear me mention much about technology in this book, other than that it's there. It has
fun.
Its pros and its cons.
You don't not use it, but it is not the representation of reality.
No, and in fact, you get paralysis by analysis. There are all these dashboards. There's so much information. You don't know what to do with all the. You can't possibly take action on all the dashboards that exist.
Right. And I hear all this, sales velocity. And I go, once you start putting an equation, anything that isn't real, said by the customer and confirmed by the rep, that it's gamed. You're setting up a game that everyone plays the game. The game is revenue. The game is happy customers. The game is market domination. The game is not inside that bunker at home office.
Yes, and all of that is, did we provide an offering that was good enough that our customers will be here in a few years because we helped them solve a problem? Yeah. Deal velocity is not a really important variable to, well, my customers know that we solved their problems for years. Yeah. Nothing to do with that.
Yeah. So what was the motivation for the book? Was it you wanted to codify it?
I think so. A couple of things, and that's a great question. I wrote the book versus having someone write it with me or partnering on with a content editor, because yes, I wanted to synthesize the way I think about building and leading a sales team and all the factors that really do make a sales leader last.
Yeah.
The other motivation, it was to serve a market, serve a segment in the general selling population that I think is overly inundated with a new book every Tuesday in Amazon about some hockey stick formula that you're going to, if you read this book, you're going to triple your business. And when I read it, it lacks really a lot. Most of them lack a lot of substance, or it's so related to one specific company,
one skill,
one thing, that it's not repeatable.
Right.
And that's so what I think I've done here is borrowed principles and borrowed analogies from a profession that's been around longer than selling, not by much, but a little bit longer than selling, and saying, look, we have a lot to learn from our friends in the agricultural community.
Yeah, and that's it, because people in business don't think that way. Don't think long term. Let's go through some of the principles.
Yeah, so there are 7, okay? And the first one is planning. We've joked about the fact that no sales leader really plans, or when they do, it's too late. And planning is not only putting together a budget, it's also not just thinking about adversity, knowing that adversity at some point is going to happen in the year. Yeah. And what are you going to do? So it's about contingencies. I don't see a lot of plans from sales leaders that account for any type of adversity, and yet it happens every single year.
Right.
So we talk about what are the things, how does planning fail? Yeah. And how do you account for that? The second is positioning. And this kind of gets into what we were talking about with the sales kickoff. But the essence of this chapter is a perfect plan that doesn't have the buy-in of the team or won't fly. Right. So we give the sales leader real practical ways to position the plan so that the sales team is motivated. When sales teams have a mutiny against the plan, it's not because of the plan. It's because they're asked to do something differently, and no one has shown them what's in it for them.
Right. Yeah.
So then
Because
the
it usually
third,
comes from marketing sometimes, and then through management, or it may be the board, or somebody just wants to do something different. And
yeah.
I've seen too many of those where it's like, this is working, but we want to do this new thing. So go do this new thing. But, and you're like, that doesn't work. And I've seen
Sometimes.
like the whole team go try and do it, doesn't work. And then they go back and start again.
Or maybe it is the right thing. Maybe it is time to do something differently, but we haven't connected how this new thing supports not only the mission of the company, why the founder created it, but the vision, like what it is that we're trying to do for the customers and marketplace.
Yeah.
Because the reps get so caught up in how this affects me. It's the primitive brain saying, well, I made this much last year and looking at this
Right.
plan, I'm not going to do it. So you have to, it's far more nuanced. And so positioning the plan is a really important responsibility of the sales leader, and it's often neglected.
Yeah.
Then the third principle is preparing. You have to prepare your team. Some of that's training. Some of that is thinking through the sales kickoff. If there's a new product, what does that look like? How does this fit into the other portfolio? And then the fourth is plant. And that's really simple, putting seeds into the ground, the prospecting work. And then the fifth principle is tend. Oftentimes leaders think that if we just go plant, well, there's going to be a harvest. But things we talked about from the beginning, if you don't, there's a lot of work that's got to be done between putting seeds in the ground and putting hay in the barn.
Yeah.
So we talk about what I think is one of the biggest things you'll get from that chapter is I really challenge the geographical territory model that I still see pervasive in the marketplace, that I don't think is helping the customer make sense of what you want, how you want them to transact with you.
Yeah.
So we talk about that, and then obviously we spend a chapter on harvest. That's the seventh principle, and then the last one is restore, and I think it's the one that's most commonly neglected. And restore and rest are two different things. Rests in the sales culture is something that we laugh at, we roll our eyes. It's a sign of rest. Oh, you're going to take a day off?
That's what Sunday's for.
That's what Sunday's for, right? Well, you might find it interesting that the two top coaches in football, Bill Belichick in the NFL, Nick Saban in the college ranks, they rest. They put an artificial end to one season before they start the next one. They go away, you can't find them. But restoring is not resting. Resting is great and it's important. We talk about it, but restoring is fixing to make it new. And you have a responsibility to fix your people, to fix yourself, and to go fix your customers. If you just take out from your customers and pull money out of their pockets and you don't put something back into that business, that's a customer that's going to leave. And it's the, like I said, it's the principle that most sales leaders don't understand, don't make time for, or don't know how to embrace it without getting pushback from their management team or feeling weak amongst their peers.
Yeah. And that, can you give us some examples of how to do that?
Yes. So I think there is a way to rest and restore that overlaps into planning.
Yeah.
Okay. So the end of the year for a lot of companies in the B2B world, it slows down because, let's face it, customers don't want to meet with you. They're trying to be with their families. So instead of putting all this pressure on our team to hit a number in November and December that's bigger than October, and I still don't understand why. So instead of putting all this artificial pressure to close, what if we pulled the team together at the end of the year, celebrated the successes that individuals and the team received throughout the year, and then began planning and unveiling what will be the plan for next year, getting buy-in, doing this at the end of the year, do it in a warm place, bring all the people that live up north to someplace warm, bring their families, celebrate, reward, and then reinvigorate the team in a way that gets them ready for the next year without doing that in February and March when the year's already started.
Because most people go off in October, the management team goes off in October and starts planning the next year without any input from the feet on the street.
That's right. And oftentimes the sales leader who should be in that meeting shrinks down or cowards down from saying, I want to go, this is my team, damn it, this is my budget, I should tell you how we're going to spend it each month.
Yeah.
and they don't go to that meeting. They don't participate in it. So things like I've real life example. I know in my career, I wanted to have frontline sales managers. I was responsible for 24 direct reports. It was unsustainable. I didn't go to that planning meeting. The CFO cut out the line item from frontline sales managers. And I talk about this in the book. I had to go back and do some damage control and say, you don't understand. This is a real expense that we have to have, and it's an investment. It's not an expense, really. It's an
Yeah.
investment in how we're going to get this done. So I think you've got to be in those meetings in October so that
Right.
you can get the plan to your team before the year. Let them get over the uncomfortable aspects of it, and let's get to work when the year starts.
Cool. Well, what are some of the other principles?
Those are it. So
Those are the seven.
you
Yeah.
got seven. Yeah. So plan, position, prepare, plant, tend, harvest, restore.
Yeah. Now, the tend, I think, is the one that stuck out with me of how people are doing it wrong today. I don't think they understand how their customers buy. They assume because it's a lead that now's the time.
Correct.
But usually, they usually raise their hand long before it's time. They're thinking about it. They're curious about it. But that time is usually a couple of months later. It's not an active purchase. And like a summer house or a farm or farm equipment, you're probably thinking about 3 different pieces of equipment or what you want to do, right, with your house. Probably 3, 6 months, maybe a year before you do. And I don't think companies understand that nor build it into their sales process of how to help that person through those gaps.
I think that's true, and that's because they've reduced. They've gotten. It's become very unclear about the sales cycle
Yeah.
and how we're going to stage business. So
Yeah. Hi. Sorry about that. Can you hear
that's
me?
okay. I can.
Yeah. My internet looked like it went down for a second there. Um, what the last I heard was we were talking about tending.
I'll just start the whole. I'll start the whole answer again if you want me to.
Yeah. Okay. Here we go.
Because we haven't segmented the market by how they want to buy, and we don't clearly understand how customers make purchasing decisions, so much of the potential addressable market is unmet, untouched because of the way that we have architected our team.
Yeah.
So let me give you, we use the word territory a lot in the sales world. The definition of a sales territory is an assigned area of responsibility. It's not Midwest. It's not Los Angeles. It's not mid market.
Yeah.
It's not small to medium business. And a lot of the market gets ignored and neglected. A lot of potential buyers do because we have just assumed some structure that our predecessor gave us or that the board is comfortable with. And we haven't thought about how to really segment our market. And so we miss so many opportunities. We call on them, like you said, 6 months too late. And they're like, yeah, I bought it 6 months ago. Where were you? I didn't even,
Yeah.
I forgot. Yeah, but you told me you were going to call me before you made a decision. Yeah, well, I forgot.
Yeah. So, what is a smarter way of defining a territory?
Understanding how a customer wants to transact with you, segmenting the market only by how a customer buys. If there is distinct differences in how a customer of a certain size, of a certain location, and of a certain role in the marketplace, if that affects the way they want to transact with you, then segment them that way. So let me give you some examples of some bad examples that might uh, emphasize this point. how many companies, B2B companies, do you know that might send 4 or 5 different reps into the same account because each rep represents a different product line?
A lot. Yeah, portfolio companies. Yeah,
Well, who does the customer call when there's a problem?
yeah,
I don't know.
right.
Rep doesn't know. Customer sure as heck doesn't know. Or how about this? How many customers get neglected because you've set up a territory by a series of zip codes, and there's another rep who has zip codes that are adjacent to that, but you're sensitive to going over there because she always comes into that side of the territory and is calling on customers that are really yours, and so you just said whatever, I'll let her have it. Well, then she's heard the manager say stop doing that, so she's not calling on it, and so it creates all these unintended consequences that can be really devastating
Yeah.
to building the momentum you need to hit your number.
And that was kind of one of the big lessons I had last year was that the great reps that I talked to, focus was a real distinction. They did not work on 50 or 100 accounts. They worked on a very set amount of accounts in a certain priority list. And they did really well. And then the junior reps were like all over the map. They get a state and they don't know where to start.
Yeah. So I think the best book on that subject was written in 1991 by Miller Hyman, New Successful Large Account Management. And,
Yeah.
I've kind of taken my own adoption from that, and I call it the 550-500. What are the 5 accounts that are going to make up 80% of my number this year?
Yeah.
What are the other 50 that are going to make up that remaining 20%? And what are the 500 that I need to know that could just blow the whole thing out of the water? And I think there's so many reps that could look at that 550-500 model and just expands the way you think about what your territory is.
Right. And you can change them and you can reprioritize them.
It's a living, breathing document. It's changing all the time.
And I think your point is really appropriate today because not everybody's in that same building at that address, right? You have subcontractors, you have partners, you have temporary employees, you got hired experts that may not even be in that state.
Yeah.
And they're part of the buying process. So how do you split that deal up?
Or conversely, the rep in Chicago, the company is headquartered in Las Vegas, but the rep in Chicago got the meeting, and now you make their Las Vegas rep manage the whole opportunity. She's got no rapport.
Right.
And so it's a backwards way of doing it. So
and that's why I always try to get Delaware, because I go, hey, it's a Delaware corporation. I get 10% no matter what.
Exactly. So sales leaders that are listening, executives, challenge your team to think about, have we really segmented the market solely by how the customer wants to do business? And if we haven't, if we're making it easier on us versus the customer, it's lazy.
It is. And it's just
inexpensive.
And then you get a lot of internal bickering. And how much time do you really want to spend deciding whose deal it is? And then once it's closed, who gets pieces of it for no apparent reason?
That's expensive.
That's really
Every time
expensive.
I'm on the phone with a manager going over attribution, it's costing me money that I could be out helping grow the business. Yeah.
And what do you hope that leaders get out of reading the book?
I hope that they understand that 1 year is not going to make your career.
Yeah.
Okay, so you hit your quota this year, you blew it out. Now you're some sales expert. You're updating your LinkedIn thing.
Now you're a consultant.
Yeah, now you're a consultant. Great, you hit it.
Yeah,
you're that piece of technology that's outdated.
Yeah.
The sales leaders that I've seen stick around, go on to lead companies, go on to be operating partners in private equity funds, recognize that there is no substitute for doing the little things really well.
Yeah.
And I think this book tells you what they are.
And do you think this is one of the causes why the life expectancy of a VP of sales or CRO is so short?
I think it's a contributing factor. I think that if I had to narrow it down, the reason why sales leaders don't make it, it's because the book-ended principles of plan and restore.
Yeah.
They don't plan. So they end up doing a lot of chasing their tail, and they don't restore. And I see them, and this is a tragic and dire example, but I see them in treatment, mental health breakdowns, gambling, burning out, and saying, I just want to be a rep. I can't manage a team anymore. So that's the translation of that is going backwards in their career, and then having to explain later in the future, why did you go back and be a rep?
Yeah.
A lot of real consequences to not understanding the unavoidable principles that are out there.
Yeah. And what are your big plans for this year?
My big plans for this year are to see where this book goes.
Yeah.
I personally have assessed my business and realized I've got a little bit of client concentration. And so I'm addressing that in a healthy way. Yeah, that's what I'm doing this year.
Cool. And where can people get the book and connect up with you?
You can get the book anywhere books are sold. And I'm reading the audiobook for those of you that want to listen to a Southern redneck read to you. You can find it that way. But I will always sell it less than it's in iTunes or on Amazon if you go to therevenueharvest.com. And anybody that buys the book from therevenueharvest.com, if you buy the paperback or the hardback, I'll sign it, give you a personal note, a little bit of a different touch. Some people care about that. But yeah, so you go to therevenueharvest.com.
Hey, I hope you enjoyed that interview. Hey, I want to make sure you're checking out b2brevenue.com. That is where you can get a free copy of an ebook that I did. It's a real ebook. It's not a fluff book. It shows and talks about how companies make buying decisions and how you can influence that from both a marketing and a sales standpoint, how to find all the people that are in the decision path and what they need to see, know, and touch and feel before they make a product selection. If your team needs some coaching, some help, some training, some systems, some processes that do work today, because we know what doesn't work, or you know what doesn't work, I'll show you what does work and how to connect and get into pretty much any account. It includes deal coaching and content community, and I can customize it for your particular company. Just go to b2brevenue.com, look under training, schedule a call with me. We can talk it over, or just sign up. You can pay per month or all at once, whichever makes most sense for your budget. Also, I put out videos pretty much daily on LinkedIn and on YouTube. On LinkedIn, it's Brian G. Burns, and on YouTube, it's Brian Burns Sales. Just search for that if you like to consume some video content. And if you see me on LinkedIn, please put a comment and a share and a like on some of the videos. I really appreciate it. I've got a company page for each podcast. This one, the B2B Revenue Leadership Podcast, where I put both content and humor videos out daily. And tell a friend about the podcast. Really appreciate you listening. Check out the show notes for all the partners and the connections you can make there, the coupon codes for the products to evaluate them, see if they're a right match for you. And we'll see you next time.